What's up, guys, and welcome to episode 13 of Mr. Millennial's Revenge. I'm your host, Nick DiMaria. Thanks for tuning in. Today on the podcast, I'm joined by one of my old dear friends, scenester, musician, train enthusiast, Mr. Steve Rodgers. If you're unfamiliar with Steve, he owned the outer space in the Spaceland Ballroom, and to be honest, the New Haven Jazz Underground was its humble beginnings were at the outer space, and we talk about this in the interview, and I'm going to talk a little bit of it up top, kind of how the New Haven Jazz Underground kind of came to be, and it would not have happened without Steve Rodgers, so I'm really excited to present my interview with him. He is one of the founding members of Mighty Purple, one of the leaders of that band. They've been around a long time, based out of New Haven, Hamden, Connecticut, and but for nearly 15 years, probably longer than that, off the books, he ran music venues. He has always been a person who's welcomed jazz and welcomed all the weird jazz that he let me book. I've recorded a live record at the outer space. I was a bartender at the outer space. I was the sound guy. I was the door guy. I was the showrunner. I really learned how to put on a show at my work at the outer space, and basically running the jazz series at the outer space is where the New Haven Jazz Underground began. I would book local acts on one night a week, and eventually started taking more risks. I booked Peter Bernstein, Eddie Henderson, Jeremy Pelt, Wayne Escoffrey, Kevin Hayes, Winard Harper, and a few more. And would bring them in and hired a local rhythm section to back them up, and they were some of the most successful shows I ever put on. And that was training, basically, for how I would set up the New Haven Jazz Underground, how the Jazz Fest, the Jazz Block Party would go. All of my experience as a show runner, as a community activist, started at the outer space. And Steve taught me a lot. I watched a lot. Kept both eyes open my time there, because I wanted to make sure that I learned as much as I could. Because at that point, I thought I was going to own my own club. I thought my goal was I'm going to own a bar at some point, and I want to have jazz and other kinds of music. So let me watch, closely, see what works, what doesn't. Not sure about the club of my own, but who knows? It's you never say never to anything. It would be amazing to have something of my own, but I like what I'm doing right now with the Underground, and couldn't have been anything without Steve. So I'm really excited to present that interview with you guys. But first, the housekeeping really quick. Mr. Millennial's Revenge is a production of the New Haven Jazz Underground, which is a community-based organization dedicated to clinics, jam sessions, and concerts in the name of jazz in New Haven, Connecticut. We are completely crowd-funded, so please consider becoming a Patreon subscriber if you are not already. For as low as $2 a month, you can contribute monthly to our efforts, helping us put on our Mind the Hang concert series. Currently, it's a one show a month presentation of a jazz group. We stream it live on Facebook. It's been super successful since we started in July, so we'd like to keep that going, and we do that with very modest subscriptions from people who just love the music and people who are near and far. So if you want to become a subscriber for, again, as low as $2 a month, please go to patreon.com/NHVJU, and thank you for your support. So last episode I talked about Christmas music and whatnot, and I stand by everything I said in my interview with Shane. I love Paul McCartney as much as the next guy, but god damn it, whenever I hear the bow wow 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 bow wow 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 it makes my blood boil. It. God, I hate that fucking song. But I'm not going to harp on it because there's a whole episode dedicated to it. What I am going to segue to is please check out on YouTube, I guess, Peter Jackson's been working on a Beatles movie. It's called Get Back. It's like all this unreleased footage. I'm not the biggest Beatles fan, but I do enjoy the Beatles. I got the feels. I got goosebumps watching the little clip that he released today. Go check it out. Peter Jackson, Get Back. It is incredible. Just in color, behind the scenes, in studio kind of stuff. I guess it's never been seen before. It's going to be in theaters next year, but they decided to release some of it today. Super exciting. If you're a Beatles fan, you're going to lose your shit. And even if you're not, even if you're just a fan of music, you're going to lose your shit. I certainly was really excited by what I saw. So check it out. So yesterday marked the last of the NHJU buskers, and I'm really, really happy with what we were able to do this holiday season. So it just in short, the NHJU and Yale have a working relationship, and they hire musicians to busk basically downtown. And in a year with no gigs, barely any work, it was great to be able to employ some excellent musicians and give them a really good wage these last 3 weeks. It's been kind of like something, it's like a win for the COVID era, because man, I mean, so many people have not worked in months, and I'm just really happy to be able to make this happen. And normally when I talk about Yale and New Haven, I got a lot of grumblings. I feel like the school should really step up a bit more and help out the community in which it exists. But this is a big win, and like basically we need more of what just happened. So thank you to Yale University for continuing to work with the NHJU. I think we are bridging. We're forming a connection that is going to be very worthwhile in the years to come. So I'm hoping that we can get something together in the springtime. That would be great, get some outdoor musician stuff happening. I think that would be super killing. So, stay tuned. In a couple of months, you might see more musicians playing around downtown. So thanks again to all involved. Thanks to the musicians who played. You guys are rock stars. It was literally snowing during the very last shift of the Busker series. So, they were out there in rain and sleet and snow, and I love them all, and they're all great players. So thank you so much to all the musicians who played. You guys are the best. So real quick, I got to talk about Mandalorian, right? Because how can I not? Spoiler alert up ahead. Letting you know right now, if you have not watched Season 2 of The Mandalorian, you need to pause now and come back to this episode when you're done. So you've been fully warned. Luke motherfucking Skywalker, are you kidding me? So I'm watching the show, and I've seen on the internet, as much as everybody else, rumors about who was going to be in the season and everything. And there were rumors that Luke Skywalker was going to show up in the last episode. And I didn't want to get my hopes up. So I just kind of put that idea out of my head. And I was like, nope, it won't happen. Don't get excited because you don't want to be disappointed. Well, what the fuck, man? I started watching the episode on the couch. I ended the episode watching on the floor about 2 feet away from the TV with tears in my eyes of joy. I couldn't believe it. First off, it looked fucking incredible. But I finally got to see on the screen the Luke Skywalker that I always pretended to be when I was a kid, when I would play Star Wars in my backyard or in the woods behind my house. That's the Luke that I would pretend I was, and that's the Luke Skywalker that you see in the extended universe novels. And every time I get into an argument with another Star Wars fan about how much I hate the prequels and all this stuff, I'm like, if you don't read the books, then you just don't get it, and I can't relate to you. And I feel like my argument was finally presented on screen, and man, how exciting. So it's super exciting to be a Star Wars fan. I mean, Luke was just kicking ass. I don't give a shit if in 10 years the CGI looks terrible. I don't. Doesn't matter. I would be totally fine if they put Luke in a show computerized and they had Mark Hamill voice him. Fine. I don't give a fuck. And then I'm also on I'm on board casting Sebastian Stan as Luke because, yeah, he does look like Mark Hamill. If you don't know who that is, he plays the Winter Soldier in the Avengers movies. He looks like Mark Hamill. Just enough to make it convincing. Cast him. Let's have the Adventures of Luke Skywalker. That would be incredible, right? I bet you're wondering, how many episodes of this jazz podcast is he going to talk about Star Wars? Probably all of them. What? You can't stop me. Anyway, so check it out. The Mandalorian is fucking cool. So I've mentioned a few times that my brunch gig has been downgraded to a solo gig, and I'll tell you, when you're a horn player and you're playing a solo gig, what an experience. It makes you really focus. If that wasn't obvious enough, there is nothing to hide behind. And coming from a trumpet player, I like to think of myself as a student, not only of Dr. Eddie Henderson's, but of Jeremy Peltz as well, and because I really I've taken enough lessons with him that I feel like I could say that, but the concept of playing quietly on a brass instrument, especially, really trains you to be able to play with a full capacity for dynamics in air control. And man, that has been so important for these gigs where I am so exposed. And it's been pretty impressive because I've been playing about half the gig with nothing, just myself in the horn, and you really start to bring out your, if you're not a Miles guy like I am, but you start to think about the simplicity and how the melody, its importance. And one of my favorite musicians to listen to for standards is Dexter Gordon, because I like how, for lack of a better description, he plays melodies of standards pretty straight, I guess, if you know what I'm talking about. And so whenever I'm first learning a standard, I will try to seek out if there's a Dexter Gordon version, just because I feel like it helps me, grasp the melody without any kind of inflections or anything. Miles is like that too, and man, it's helped me play in a minimalistic fashion. I don't try to get too flashy, just try to voice lead on my own through the horn. And man, I in a weird way, I'm really, really grateful for this opportunity to be playing a paid gig, and I'm playing straight ahead American songbook stuff, and I'm able to just carry myself. So it's been interesting. And I appreciate the opportunity. On the other hand, I do bring a speaker and I play tracks while I play, just to kind of fill it out. I feel like it would be too awkward if it was just trumpet. But, man, it's funny because it's I used to think that shit was not cool to play with a backing track. And what do they say, die a hero or live long enough to become the villain, see yourself become the villain. That's what gets me through it. What can I say? But anyway, very interesting to be a horn player and play solo. So if you're out there like me, the importance of playing a tune, practicing playing a tune by yourself, I can't stress it enough. I'm glad I've been trying to do it a lot, especially during COVID. Just trying to basically be the lead and my own accompaniment. It's been super helpful because I was literally found myself on the plank. I'm walking the plank and the sharks are circling. So, no complaints from any audience members, the modest ones I've had. So I have to say, must be doing something pretty good. So today's Carla Thomas's birthday. If you don't know who she is, she was a soul singer for Stax Records, and Stax Records from a jazz musician's point of view, is some of the best stuff you can listen to because it's so deeply rooted in jazz and blues and stuff. And I remember working with Peter Bernstein a few years ago, and I asked him, because we were in the car, and there was an awkward silence, and I was like, so what do you listen to? Because like fucking idiot, right? So lame. But anyway, he was like, and he's naming, George Coleman and Wes Montgomery and stuff. But then there was like a couple of beats pause, and he just goes, and I fucking love Stax Records, man. Like Steve Cropper, Duck Dunn, all these guys. I was like, oh, go on, and it was actually the best part of the conversation was talking about Stax Records. And if you're unfamiliar with Stax Records, there was like you had Motown up in Detroit, and Motown had a specific sound. Atlantic Records, we're talking, Aretha Franklin, Ray Charles, that sort of thing. That had a particular sound when it came to like soul music, right? And then, you have Muscle Shoals and the LA sound and that sort of thing. And then you got like Chicago Blues, Chess Records, that sort of thing. Stax was devoted to like this soulful but southern kind of sound. It's definitely not quite like the Motown sound, but it's got blues, it's got soul, it's got like a little country twang in some of the stuff. And if you're completely unfamiliar, think Otis Redding. Otis Redding was on Stax Records. But Rufus Thomas, Carla Thomas, Sam and Dave. My favorite pop song of all time is "Hold On, I'm Coming." That is my favorite pop song of all time. I've said it on the show, and I will stand by it. I'm probably gonna get flagged on YouTube now, but there it is. Love that song so much. All that stuff with Stax Records. The house, a lot of the house. Oh, Booker T and the MGs, Green Onions, that stuff. A lot of the house band was made up of the guys who would end up being in the Blues Brothers band. So, a lot of backing players were like Donald Duck Dunn, Steve Cropper, Matt Guitar Murphy, those kind of guys. Isaac Hayes started out as a songwriter and like a studio musician for Stax, and then he went solo, and his solo records were through Stax Records. So, it made me think, I realized it was Carla's birthday, listened to some of her tracks, then, started remembering that I read this book called Respect Yourself, which is like the story of Stax Records. If you're into the history of the music business and record labels like Blue Note and Impulse and all that stuff, it's up there, man. It's one of the greatest books you can read and just learn about the history of like the sound of these albums. They all sound the same, like Motown, like Blue Note. Like there's a specific flair to these record companies. So if you want to check one out, buy yourself a Christmas present this year, get that book, Respect Yourself. And then, just go online and stream any Stax playlist, whether someone made it or, the streaming service did. It's going to be good. Lot of great singers on that label. Of course, you've got Otis Redding and, and Booker T and the MGs and that kind of thing. So, and the Bar-Kays. The Bar-Kays were actually Otis's backing band, I believe. So, you know what's similar is Daptone Records. Like Daptone Records is probably the modern equivalent to Stax. So if you're familiar with Sharon Jones and R.I.P. Charles Bradley, R.I.P. real hard. They came from the Daptone label. Same kind of concept where, because Daptone's music does sound like it's all made in one place, so it's that sort of thing. So definitely check it out. Check out Carla Thomas, man. What a great singer. What a great singer. So many amazing singers coming out of that sound. She had a duo record with Otis Redding, which is really good. It's called The King and the Queen. Hip stuff. So I strongly recommend. So happy birthday, Carla. She's still with us, luckily. And it's also Frank Zappa's birthday. I'm recording 2 episodes on the same day. It's December 21st. Today would have been Frank Zappa's birthday. Like I said a couple episodes ago, I'm going to do a Frank Zappa episode. So with a good friend of mine, who plays a lot of Zappa music. So hopefully we'll make that interview and episode happen in early 2021. So, but yeah, for their sake, check out Carla Thomas and Frank Zappa. And holy shit, a fucking hawk just landed in the bird feeder outside of my office. So I have to hit pause and get my wife down here. Okay, I'm back. If you saw what I saw, you would understand why I had to abruptly stop. My office faces the backyard, as I've said in many episodes prior, and we got the salt marsh back there and everything. And we have this bird feeder that's right outside of my office window. So normally I'm seeing like little sparrows and other birds, feeding, and the occasional squirrel. And then all of a sudden, this fucking gigantic hawk just landed right there, and I was like, so I apologize. What are you gonna do? Anyway, let's get to the interview with Steve. Like I said up top, Steve used to own a lot of great clubs that I played at in many different bands. He always gave me an opportunity, man, and that's something that I always wanted to keep in mind with the Jazz Underground, is keeping creating opportunities for other musicians, especially younger ones, and anyone who wants to learn how to be a musician and that sort of thing. So, basically, I wouldn't be where I am without a lot of opportunities that Steve gave me. So let's get to my interview with musician and good friend Steve Rodgers. Some of the best conversations are when when I've stopped recording the interview. So that's why I wanted to not talk as much so we can get this going now.
Absolutely. I know how that happens.
Yeah.
For sure.
So joining me right now is the man who started it all in many ways, Mr. Steve Rodgers. How are you, man?
Hey, I'm doing great, man.
Yeah. It's been how fucking long since I've last seen you? So long that you've got like past shoulder length hair.
Oh yeah, sure. I guess I do.
Yeah,
it's the wig. No, it's not.
Yeah. You've got this Wayne's World vibe going right now because you got the hat and the flannel. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to be too Garth or whatever.
You hear me? I'm gonna take.
Yeah.
So how's it going, man? First off, how are you?
I'm doing great. I the last 3 years of my life since I probably saw you last was 3 years ago. It's been like this crazy adventure and total like reinventive time for me, rediscovery of who I am and what makes me tick, and why I exist and what's important and all those things. And really have spent a lot of time getting close to my family. I actively help homeschool my kids. Great. If you're having a beer, I'm having one too.
Oh yeah. This is a casual show, man.
That's good.
Yeah, for sure. Feel at ease, please.
Yeah. My life now is a complete 180 difference from when I had 25 employees and a bar and 3 music stages. Yeah. I make art and write songs all the time, and art has kind of become almost like a second job for me, and music being the other job. And then I have a couple of weird other things that I do. I fix Fender Rhodes and Wurlitzers a couple of days. Yeah, with a friend of mine,
Fred.
Yeah, he works for a company called he's like one of the dudes at Vintage Vibe. I don't know if you know that.
Well,
Fred.
I know Fred and I know Vintage Vibe, and that's awesome that you guys hooked up.
Yeah, I've known Fred since he was like in high school and I was in high school. So so I work with Fred a couple days a week, and he's a really great guy, and he knows just about anything that you could ever want to know about any electric piano or organ ever made. He's been a wealth of information, and so it's been really neat for the last about year and a half working with him, and really learning how to do that. I have a couple of
I see them back there. Yeah,
I have a couple of roads. I'm in my music room, but
it looks great.
A couple of roads that that I restored. One was a gift for my birthday earlier this year from a fella named John Peckman, who's an amazing drummer. He played with my band a few times, but he's sort of one of these guys that's like played with every band, you know, from the 70s or the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. I mean, he just played with everybody, and he's like a music file. And I put this joke out on my like a week before my birthday, being like, "Dear world, I would love, you know, to get a cabin in the woods for my birthday, and a Fender Rhodes, and you know, like all this kind of stuff." And the pandemic had just hit, so, or no, it hadn't hit yet. That's right. It was 2 weeks before the pandemic.
Wow.
And yeah, and so he literally said, I have one in my garage for you." He commented, "I have a Fender Rhodes for you in my garage." And so I sent him a personal message. I like deleted that right away because I didn't want anybody else to hit him up and be like, "I'll give you $1,000 for it," you know.
Right.
So yeah, you know, I hit him up, and I was like, "You can't be serious," and he was like, "Yeah, I am." So I picked it up that weekend, and you know, and played what I didn't know at that time would be my last show pre-pandemic, you know.
Right.
Um, and I brought it home and started working on it, and you know, because I had learned a lot from Fred, and Fred, you know, has access to materials that I needed for it and stuff.
Sure.
And so then the pandemic hit, and I just, you know, basically I had restored this Rhodes during the first week of the pandemic. It was just such a bummer, you know, because I had all of these shows that were booked all through the spring and you know, I mean, I'm not complaining about it because everybody is in the same boat, you know.
Yeah, that's one of the things that like has gotten me through it in the competitive side, is that at least everybody's just as fucked as I am. So it's okay that you know, it's funny, you know, nobody's playing shows and you can feel left out. Like we're all on the same level here. We're all left out, you know. So I hear you.
Yeah. That, you know, that first week of the pandemic, I was super bummed, you know, like I was, you know, and it took me a while to kind of get out of that bummed, but I had this Rhodes to work on. So I did that. And then I just started writing song after song after song after song. And I'd never used recording software before. And, you know, I'm still not very good at it 9 months in here, but I've written like 2 albums worth of material since shutdown.
Awesome.
And have really applied myself to that. And sort of in the 2 months in, I started getting all these offers to come and play social distance concerts in people's backyards. And I think that really got me kind of through emotionally through the spring, summer, and the early part of the fall. You know, I think I did about 25 or 30 of those this summer. Yeah. And they were all safe, you know, like I really like, there were a couple that I turned down that were like, "No, you guys don't sound like you're on the level," you know. So
Right.
you know, it would be like a maximum of 25 people at most of these events. And there were a couple of town events that had close to 100, but everybody's like spread out. And it was so surreal, Nick. I mean, it feels like post-apocalyptic, like wasteland. Everybody's wearing masks, and like you can't hug anybody. I don't, you know how it is. And
It's got a lot of science fiction to it, you know, in a lot
definitely.
of aesthetics that make the pandemic era what it is. You know, same thing. I can tell you my last gig was March 8th before you know, everything shut down. And then I played a few gigs over the summer. some of my residencies.
Sunday night, yeah.
Yeah, you know, some of my residencies you know, have patio stuff going on. So in the summer I was able to, you know, play out and whatnot. And now one of the saving grace gigs is I have this cooperative pact with Yale, and they pay me to busk, basically. Like they give me these gigs where, you know, and they stick me somewhere downtown, and I'm supposed to busk. I'm supposed to play, like, you know, right now it's Christmas songs and stuff like that. And the beautiful part about it is they give me more work than I can physically do. Like there's 3 locations at the same time, so I can only be at one. So I'm able to subcontract the work out. and so I can hire other horn players in the area to for a paying gig. So it's been nice to not only make a little money for myself, and play, but knowing that I'm employing some other cats. That's like been more beneficial. It's almost like this Christmas cheer kind of thing where it's like, what day is it? It's Christmas Day, sir. And I'm throwing out gigs instead of like gooses and shit. But that's been cool. And then surprisingly, my brunch gig is still going. It's been downgraded to a solo gig, but I mean, they told me they don't want to throw me out, and there's still like some people showing up, so I'm gonna take it while I can get it, and and it is what it is. But basically, that's it because other than that, yeah, and then the Jazz Underground we're doing. It's called Mind the Hang, and that's like a streamed concert that happens once a month now because everything's money is so tight that the most we could do is one show a month. So like we got some things going on.
That's awesome, man. That's great to hear. Yeah, I've diversified. I mean, not necessarily I wasn't like, hey, I need to diversify myself. Like basically, when the spaces came to their ends, I really had a soul-seeking, year.
I can imagine.
After that. And I got really healthy. Like I quit smoking cigarettes, and I actually, I took some time off of drinking alcohol just so I could clear out and refresh, and just started getting healthy and doing things like push-ups and sit-ups with my son in the morning, which is really strange. I have not kept up with in Corona. I've got the Corona 15 like everybody else right now.
I have managed to work out nearly every day since.
That's amazing.
Because it's keeping me sane. Otherwise, I would fall down a deep dark tunnel if I couldn't work out. So I've actually, if anything, managed to keep. I'm staying where I was. So like obviously I'm drinking more, I'm snacking more, but because I'm exercising, I won't gain the weight. I'll just stay neutral. So that's like my goal: stay neutral.
Yeah, I'm super active all the time. Like I do so much stuff. When I'm fixing pianos at Fred's, I am at a workstation. But that's a couple days a week. I started hiking a lot and stuff like that, which is great. And in that first year after the spaces came to their ends, like I got the opportunity to go to Honduras on a missions trip situation, and take some high school kids with me. Yeah, it takes a bunch of high school kids to like a third world country where
what could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, exactly. But it ended up being an incredible time where I basically helped this sort of like young church band that was there develop their whole thing, and I like redid their church's whole PA, and I ended up hiking up to the top of these like crazy mountains, like 2,000 feet up in the air, and I felt like the weight of the world from all the stuff with the ends of the spaces like lift off me then. And so then I came back and I made an album, and my brother was in town, so he jumped on the album, and I had Ben Dean playing fiddle. I don't know if you know Ben, he's incredible.
I think I know him.
Yeah, and Seth Adam was playing. He's
Seth, yeah.
So I made an album, and then I put it out a few months later in April of 2019, that was an incredible experience. It was kind of like I stayed off. I didn't go on social media for a year. I just really hibernated and sort of reclused, and I started building fairy houses, because finances were really tough after the spaces, and so I didn't really have a budget to go buy my wife a nice like Mother's Day present. So I made her this like little natural materials fairy house, and she loved it, and it was so fun to make it that I made another one, and then I made another one, and I'd go hiking and collect all these materials, and I'll get to that story. But in 2019, after the record release, I ended up playing so many shows and getting invited to go play so many places, that it was, I mean, it was incredible.
Yeah.
And I got to connect with other musicians, and I started being able to like get a budget to pay some musicians to come play. It was great. And then I got this crazy job offer in the middle of the summer following my record release, while I was out playing all these shows, to build a giant winter themed model railroad for Nationals Ballpark in Washington,
Yeah.
D.C.
Well, I wanted, I mean, how could we, I mean, I'm sure anyone who decides to listen to the episode will be like, oh, they're going to talk about the space and the outer space and all that stuff. But before we do, we got to talk about the trains. So you are like a model train aficionado, right? Like you are a hobby, like a train guy. Like
So
you've got like the tracks set up all the time, right? In the makeshift,
yeah, my basement's kind of a mess at the moment. Maybe I'll take you for a little spin through it in a minute. Like, just because I've been redoing that, I had another huge project where I just built another train set for Beardsley Zoo, that I just finished that, and I built a whole fairy village for Beardsley Zoo, and that's just been a joy, because it was in their like historic greenhouse, so I spent a long time in there. But when I built that original train set, not the original one, but when I got the commission to build the train set for Enchant Christmas, which is a multi-city, huge Christmas festival that happens in baseball stadiums, they basically, the creative director actually brought me on to start building sets and scenery for their other stuff. And so they ended up flying me to Seattle and flying me to DC and to Florida, and so I was, basically away for 4 to 6 weeks, like traveling all over the place and like running around baseball stadiums, creating art. And that was like the coolest. It was just, it's just the coolest experience. And then obviously this year you can't have 20,000 people a night in a baseball stadium. So
right, of course.
That festival's not happening this year. But yeah, that was, I mean, it was a huge endeavor to, they didn't give me a whole lot of lead time, so I ended up building a model railroad that should have taken a 6-month stretch, and I did it in 2 months.
Well, that's the Steve Rodgers way, is taking the daunting challenge and doing it, doing a job 10 men couldn't do in half the time, and performing miracles. Because all of my experiences with you, seeing you lead a project, have been nothing short of miraculous, where you're always problem solving, creating, leading under the most dire circumstances, and you've always pulled through. So I am so pleased to hear that that you were doing this, man. That's so cool.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's like a whole bunch of my passions combining, and it was never really like I'm the train guy. Like I have trains, but the trains in my miniature world are more like the actors. They're like moving actors. Like I have like right now I'm building a 1950s miniature circus. Like, yeah, it's like a carnival circus. It's less animals and more rides. And like the rides will spin, so they're kind of like actors as well.
Yeah.
And I love building like a little tiny scene, like a diorama, and immersing myself in it so much that like the little people in it, I like have whole stories for them and what it's about. And I think because I create whole stories for them, it ends up being this whole world, this whole miniature world that ends up telling a story about a time of life when I didn't even exist. I didn't exist in the film.
Yeah, sure.
But all these old timers have seen my stuff, and they're like, wow, they say that I capture it in a way that is extremely hard to capture for those that were there.
Yeah, sure. My one of my nephews has an obsession with old trains, and my wife and I just got him Ensign. That's yeah.
And scale.
N scale, yeah. So we just got him a bunch of those. And when all of this nonsense is over and things are safe again, I would love for you two to hook up and give him a tour, man. He will
Oh,
It would
Definitely.
make his day. But like he is somehow like a 95-year-old man trapped in an 11-year-old's body.
That's
And
brilliant. I have an 11-year-old too, and I'm sure that they would get along in the same way because
yeah, he's
my son models as well.
yeah,
He's
yeah, he's always like into weird, not weird, but like he's always got like these very unique interests, and one of them right now is trains, and we're just visiting the other day, and he showed me like his 1929 blah blah blah, and showed me the tracks and stuff, and it's funny, when I was getting ready to sit down and talk with you about all this stuff, I was like, oh yeah, I can't forget about the trains, and I got to make the connection between Jaden and Steve, that they're both train guys. So we'll have to set something up.
You should take Jaden to Beardsley Zoo to see the layout I just built for them. It's in the greenhouse and everything's socially distanced. It's a winter wonderland walk. So you walk around the zoo and there's like different vignettes and sort of like, a bunch of sculptures, snowman sculptures that different artists built and stuff.
I will do that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Like I got that gig because I got a call last summer, in 2019, and they had heard I had a fairy village, fairy house village that I'd built, and it was pretty small at that time, maybe only like 5 or 6 houses, but they were having fairy and princess day at the zoo, and they invited me to come be a part of that. So it was me and 2 Disney princesses in a room together. And when I was running the spaces, I could have never possibly imagined that I'd be,
of course,
like I have a picture with me and 2 Disney princesses, in my fairy village.
Yeah, I mean that's what happens when you're moving on to the next thing, man, and that's it. And somehow it doesn't surprise me at all to hear this story. Like it delights me, but it also doesn't surprise me in some way. But I want to talk first off. Let's talk about the music venues, and let me start off by saying that if it wasn't for the space, and especially the outer space, the New Haven Jazz Underground would not exist. Like this podcast would not exist if so many serendipitous, as it seems, events had not happened. So you're a few years my senior, and you had opened up the space in the early 2000s. I was still playing in ska bands at that point, and I remember playing the space. I don't think I've ever had a bad memory of playing the space. That was kind of like your first baby, right? Like that was your first project, and talk about that a little bit.
It was my first legal venue.
Yeah, fair enough.
Really, the space really evolved out of like a whole community of folks that really sort of centered around like the whole my old band Mighty Purple, like sort of like it was a whole community of people that really came together, not only to sort of support our band and like the business endeavors and the promotion endeavors of getting us out of New Haven and also building our cause in Connecticut, but we also like lifted up a whole bunch of other bands too, and sort of created a network of touring bands that would trade shows with each other all around the Northeast and up and down the coast. And I mean, this is way before the internet. This was I used to call like Kinko's Copy Center, I'd be like, I want to play in Charlotte, North Carolina this summer. How can I get information on that? Well, I'm going to call Kinko's and ask the dude behind the counter which bands are coming in and copying their flyers and who the good bands are. And so that's how I started making connections outside of town, is doing that sort of. Yeah, because and then they started coming out with these yearly guides, the Musician's Guide to Touring and Promotion. You know what I mean? Book Your Own Fucking Life. Another one that was like the more punk ethic one, and then the Musician's Guide was more like this club books R&B and jazz and rock and roll and punk. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like there was the professional one, and then there was the Book Your Own Fucking Life, and those were like my when I was in my late teens and early 20s, those books were my Bible. And so
I bet
yeah, so I ended up making all these networks with all these different bands. And when they needed a show on a Monday night, it wasn't like I could call like the Tune In or Toads at the time to, those were the venues in town, and be like, hey, can we get this Monday night for this out of town band, and I'll put together 3 or 4 bands. And they'd be like, Steve, I mean, there's got to be at least 100 people here, and we're talking a Monday night. So I started putting bands on in my little tiny warehouse space, which, is about 600, 700 feet from where the legal space finally ended up.
Yeah.
Just sort of under the bridge there on Treadwell Street. And it sort of almost became like a little underground, basement show touring venue kind of thing.
Yeah.
In the same kind of way as maybe like, Crunch House, would do, and some of those other basement show. There's so many of them, they come up and they go, but we kept that rolling for a long time. And we did have this one really big show. It was our bass player Adrian's 21st birthday party, Adrian Vandegraff's 21st birthday party. And we had 12 bands. It was 12 kegs, and it was noon to midnight, and drum circle all day, and huge couches everywhere, and 500 people showed up. And 5 days later, there were still like 20 people camping in our parking lot, in our little driveway parking lot. And so me and my brother had this like heart to heart, like, how, what are we going to do about this? Like, we, all these people are awesome, and they want to, like, help the cause and build all these bands and everything. But we don't even have a shower in our place.
Yeah.
And so we took a walk down what's now the canal line, and we came upon a building that said for rent, and it was 40,000 square feet, and we ended up getting 20,000 square feet for $1,500 a month, and it was definitely mafia owned.
Yeah.
And our original little practice space where we were having all these shows was called The Space. And I remember it was the day before Easter, and we called the guy. I'll be right over, he says. So we went, we met with this guy, and he said, you guys don't have any money. And so we went back and took up a collection and came up with the first month's rent. And we moved 13 people, 1.5 dogs, 3 cats. It was like 7 girls, 6 guys. Rich Nagel lived there. Anthony Orange Truck, Corey Nash, my brother, my sister, Jay Miles, a whole bunch of people that are still, they're still close in my life,
Sure.
And so it was like half a mile from the space, so we called it the Outer Space. And that lasted about a year until the cops shut it down. I think it was a Hatebreed show or a Chisel show or it was some punk show that was like, way overcrowded, and there was asbestos just dripping from the ceilings, I think.
Right. Totally unsafe. Yeah.
So yeah, we got shut down on that one. All the while Mighty Purple was out touring all the time and that sort of thing. And we ended up moving back into the little space, and that's when we started putting on open mics in the small space, open mic nights, and having little singer-songwriters come through. We, had to take our time and keep it kind of quiet because, the cops had gotten on to us,
They were onto you guys. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I might be taking a beer walk soon too. That way you'll get a little tour of the model railroad at the same time.
Oh yeah. Well, I wish I had brought in some extra standby beers, and so I figured I'd take you with me then, interrupting you. So, because you were on a roll there.
That's like the last of the schmeg from my one dinner beer, but
yeah.
Yeah, so I had those 2 endeavors, and then a whole bunch of stuff happened in my life. I had a really bad breakup with a girl, and the band broke up in the same like month, and ended up going on a little tour with my brother to England, and then across the states, and then he decided he was moving to New York, and then I decided that I was gonna join this missions training school, so I could like take a break from going out on the road, and just I was abusing my body pretty badly at that time in my early to mid 20s, and so I joined this missions training school, and took about 6 months off of life, and in that off of the music life and the craziness and everything. And in that time, I met my wife, through that missions training school, and I ended up going on like working in Bosnia and Croatia and London, going across Europe that summer. That was the summer before 9/11. I started dating my wife in April of 2001, and we got married in December of 2001. We
Wow.
met in April, got married in December. Our 19th anniversary was 1 week ago. So,
Congrats.
only because she's a saint.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with my sorry
Yeah.
ass.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah. So I started doing open mics again, right? After me and my wife got married, um, and then that got to be really big, and people from the towns got hip to it, and basically the landlord evicted us because the town came down on him about us putting on all these shows, and it was a tiny little spot with it was the size of like the outer space bar room, just the bar,
Yeah.
and then we shoved 50 people in there every Monday night, and some amazing people played there over the years, and so many of those musicians I'm still like friends with, or those are kids that grew up at the space. I was talking to Freddie DeLeon the other day, and he said that he played there, and I'm trying to
Wow.
remember what happened there. So basically, when we got evicted from that place, I was like, this is the end of my life. I've lived in this warehouse, for 9 years since I ran away from home when I was 17, and this my blood's in these walls, and I was like, it's over. And so when I got the eviction letter, we didn't have cell phones at that time. I didn't have a cell phone, but there was a pay phone, and I knew the only pay phone that was close by was in front of the building that eventually became the space.
Oh,
So
no shit.
I walked across the street to call my wife, and I was like crying, and I was like, we're getting evicted. I'm not gonna be able to put on these shows anymore. I was like 26 or something, and then I turned around, I looked on the building that became the space, and it said for rent, and so I called the landlord, and my wife and we had like $300 to our life, like
Yeah.
our whole
Right.
life, like
Right.
$300, a cat, and like a crappy apartment in the hood. And so we called the guy and got a meeting with him the next day, and that was a Friday. And on Monday we went and signed the lease in the afternoon, with a promise that we would send him the first $2,000 in rent. We said, hey, cash this check in a couple of days. And then I called 100 of my friends, and ended up well, to back up a little bit, we signed the lease. 2 hours later, my wife came to me and said we're pregnant.
Of course. Of course.
Yeah, yeah. And I'd been offered a job a week before that, working for an architect's office, like as an entry-level position, making models. And I turned it down because I wanted to do the space,
Oh,
and,
that's
and
amazing.
yep. And so, instead of an entry level position that would have probably had us pretty cozy, I spent the next 15 years, scraping,
Yeah.
scraping the sides of the barrel to keep the place afloat,
Man,
Um,
that was a beautiful club though, man. Like I can't think like, as a jazz musician, I know so many musicians and people who are not in my scene per se, but I met them at the space or the outer space or you know what I mean? It's like it was it was a great place for a community to meet. So
I I
these
agree.
humble beginnings are amazing because it became this beacon,
Well, it started for that reason. It
Yeah.
started because I really wanted to bring community. That was my whole mission statement, is to bring to just bring people of all shapes, color, sizes, everything together, and
Sure.
just see what happened. Just put a melting pot together, and some incredible things happen. I mean, I got into music through the spaces that I never thought I'd be into, as like a young kid who was just into like U2 and the Stones, and I like that, whatever.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
being at this my tenure at the space over 15 years, um was an incredible experience that that definitely expanded my mind. And like, I every day, I get these like sort of pang memories, like just like a little thing, like the today I was thinking about sitting outside on the front porch of the space with like that band Doozer and talking about them going for the first time, just like and then I was thinking about you know uh pulling Mitch, down off the crowd when he was crowd surfing with the tsunamis. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And all these break dancing and hip hop battle shows and just things that I never thought I'd ever see it. And I saw some crazy things there. There were definitely. I would say there are over the 15-year period, 3 or 4 nights where my life was actually in danger.
Wow.
Yeah, in the last year of the space, I don't know if I probably won't go much into the story, but I had a gun pulled on me at the end of the night, in front of the outer space,
No
um,
shit.
and it was a traumatic experience for me, and luckily a couple close friends, OT and Rich were there, and the guy pulled the gun, and my immediate reaction was just to grab it and put his hand down on the ground, and I grabbed the gun and I ran as fast as I could.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, I saw
Fight or
light
flight,
flash.
man.
Oof, dude. I mean, that's not me, like I just, just adrenaline or something took over. But that summer was when I, the I guess that's 2017. Yeah, 2017. That's when I started having meetings with folks about, trying to sell the spot, because it had got if it got to the point where I'm locking up tonight and somebody's gonna pull a gun on me and I'm not gonna see my kid walk down the aisle, like fuck that, you know what I mean?
Yeah, of course. Of
That's
course.
that's basically what started going through my head. That one experience also happened within a 2-week period of a girl at the end of the night, pulling a knife on our staff, and a band loading out because she had tried to steal their gear, and it was pouring rain, and the tour manager had pushed her over and she was bleeding. I mean, it was like horrible experience. And then there was a kid who showed up overdosing when he got to the space.
Oh my
And
God.
I mean, just like it was just like
Some CBGB shit. Like this
yeah,
is like some real rock and roll stories, Like
yeah,
well,
like
you
I
read
didn't.
about this stuff.
Yeah, I was like, I signed up to bring people together, and this
Right.
this is something that is not that.
Yeah.
Um, and there were other outside forces that were making it a lot more about corporate and not about community, and greed. And so that sort of stuff started to really infect the places towards the end, and my heart stayed in it till the very end of it,
Yeah.
I got really sick at the end. I actually lost my voice completely, and I had nodes on my vocal cords, and there was the, thank God, after surgery, like the biopsy was cool.
Yeah.
That was a huge worrisome thing. And physically I was just really sick, and I was so also very sad, about the way things had gone, with the way things ended, because it was sort of the torch was supposed to be passed, and
Right.
it
It's more like a
it's
weird
all
up.
that's water under the bridge for me now, because I Nick, I wake up every morning and I thank God that I make art and music and homeschool my kids, and I don't own a bar
Well, yeah,
at the moment.
you're now in the your career reminds me of Jim Carrey's. Like all he's doing right now is making art, and
Really?
yeah, oh yeah, look into it. He's like not really acting, and he's making art and showing it at expos and stuff, and he seems to be really happy. So I'm seeing some similarities there, and
Uh,
I'm so happy to hear that you're in this great place. And I know it could be it can be difficult to talk about, your time with the bars, because, the way it ended with like, it was almost this like tragic love affair, and, but you know, if there's one thing I can tell you, it's that you have to always remember that like you touched so many people's lives in such a positive way, mine included. So, you know, we're gonna fast forward now. So, you know, I played the space with the Tsunamis a few times, and one of the reasons why I left the Tsunamis was I didn't want to be. I remember distinctly, I didn't want to be 23 and have 16-year-olds pining all over me, and those are the kids that are like into me and stuff, into my band and stuff. And I, you know, amongst other reasons, I left the band and I stopped going to the space because I felt this weird like I'm the old guy, and it's like, you know, it's for 19-year-olds, man.
You a lot of people felt that way. They sort of they kind of graduated from it, but they still loved it. But they, you know, they were like, I love it, but like like if there's like 16-year-old kids, and that's just like off,
Right.
you know, like no.
Like, you know, to clarify, it was an all ages venue. So I only went there when the band that was playing was one I really wanted to see. And
Sure,
I
gotcha.
I distinctly remember saying to a friend, I wish that there was a version of the space that sold booze. And I swear to God, the following week was when the outer space was opened. I swear, you know, I'm not making this up. And I
Uh,
was so excited
that's,
because
that's
now
so
it's like, because I used to explain the outer space is the space for adults. And, you know, would go see shows there. And I remember the day that you offered me to run a jazz show, a jazz series on Sundays. And
yeah.
that started so much, man. Like I, you know, basically everything I do now with the underground started on those Sunday night shows. And you know, sometimes I forget, like, you know, I'll see in my Facebook memories or something, I'll see like these world-class performers, you know, on
Absolutely.
the outer space stage. And I'm like, holy shit, man. Like here, you know, and I could not be more grateful because I don't know if you remember, but you basically gave me carte blanche. You were like, you know, you were like, I love jazz. This is the night I can offer, and it's yours. And I used to have such a diverse range of groups that would come in, whether it was middle of the road, straight ahead, or more avant-garde, or more, you know, funk or something. And so many Connecticut jazz musicians like essentially started their careers on the outer space stage. It is a phenomenal memory to have, you know. And I learned so much about like running the soundboard and running shows, and I used to basically shadow you. I used to like keep a close eye on you, and you know, because I'm like, am I gonna own my own club one day? And sometimes I think about that still, you know. And then you let
Don't
me
do it.
bartend even. Yeah, you even let me bartend, and I would go from bartender to showrunner, and you know, and it was just an incredible place. And I prided myself on the fact that like all walks of jazz life were welcomed, and there were so many people who were like regulars of the bar, but then kind of became regulars of the jazz series because they would be there, you know, having a beer or whatever, and they would catch the show, and then they started coming on Sundays. And so many of my friends, you know, I met because they were just having beers on a Sunday night, and while one of my shows was playing, you know.
That's
And
amazing.
yeah, and my whole basically my whole business model, quote unquote, for the Jazz Underground is based on the experiences I had at the outer space and running a series. And you know, before the pandemic, Steve, the underground had 6 shows a week going. We had,
Really?
we had Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, Wednesday. Wait, what was it? 6? It was 2 on Sunday, and then Friday, Thursday, Monday, Tuesday. Yeah, Monday,
Were
Tuesday.
were you booking all this stuff?
I was booking all of it.
You were. That's amazing. That's
Yeah,
amazing. I
it
know
was,
what kind of endeavor that is. So
yeah,
it's basically like you have to be a bookkeeper, babysitter, counselor. I mean,
yeah.
and the list goes on and on.
It was definitely when I was the most popular in my musical career because people people would you know, call me up to be my friend so they can get the gig, you know. But yeah, all of it, all
So
of it.
that I
Yeah,
Like,
all of it I learned at my time at the outer space. All of it.
oh man,
I learned how to handle musicians, how to handle club owners better, and man, I wish you saw the very last jam session at Three Sheets before the shutdown was a sight to see. It was monumental. Standing, I mean, you know that stage room, right?
yeah,
Standing room
yeah.
only. You could, and that was again, it was a beautiful thing because there were the regulars at Sheets that would hang on the bar. They'd come into the stage room and watch us play, and it was like a fire hazard. That's how many people would show up every time, and we were probably 30 strong a night of just performers when we got shut down. It was such a shame, man. But it was such a culmination of what started at the outer space. It could not have happened at Three Sheets at all the other NHJU series if it did not start at the outer space. Like I don't think you realize that you are an integral part of the modern jazz scene in New Haven.
I didn't, and you know, thank you. I mean, I'm really honored to even think that, I had a small part facilitating that or whatever. I mean, I'm really thankful for that because um, I'm thankful to hear it, and I think that's because you know, not that I've distanced myself by any means from the scene. We've all distanced
Yeah,
in the
right.
last months, but I had just started sort of reemerging into the scene, uh, only about 6 to 8 months before COVID started, just because I really needed to take that time,
Yeah.
18 months after the stuff happened with the spaces that just to recenter and refocus. And it's and so I didn't spend a lot of time going out. I did host an open mic at the State House,
Right.
basically once a week for about 6 months
Right.
until
I think I saw you at one.
yeah.
Didn't you book me at one of them? I think you booked my band at one of them. I think so.
I
I think
probably did. Is that the last time I saw you?
it
That's
might be.
then.
Yeah, man. Because I've been trying to figure out the last time we saw each other, and yeah, you definitely booked my group at the State House. I think that was the last time. So maybe that was like January, perhaps.
This,
Maybe.
this year? Yeah, it could have been because I was it's crazy that was this year. It just
Yeah.
feels like, I mean, everything that's normal seems like years ago now.
Right. I know. I know.
It's like going to the store isn't freaking normal anymore. It's like, so everything's so weird. Um, but also things. I think it's also sort of flipped all of us to say, okay, what's really important in this life? Is it running around like a chicken with my head cut off to like make sure I make the most money and get the most things that I can, and that kind of stuff, or is it really having quality relationships and knowing people deeply and listening and sharing ideas and all the real stuff. I feel like at least I've embraced that, and I know that some of my community of friends, most of whom I don't see, have also embraced that.
Yeah.
We have a very small pod of folks. It's extremely small, and but thank you for saying that about the, I'm so glad that I was involved in somehow helping to create something. I really just, you created it.
Yeah, but you gave me
I
the
just
platform to do
like,
it, man. Like that's the thing. That's what I want you to know is like now I've got an organization that has a podcast, and it all started like ruminating on the patio with you sharing butts and sharing beers at the outer space, man. In
that's
between sets.
awesome. That's awesome. You know, um, a, a, a super close friend of mine, I made, at one of your jazz nights, and I didn't know him at all before. It's Jason Kruk. Jason Kruk
Oh, yeah.
he actually became the drummer in my church band.
Shit.
Yeah, and I was trying for the last couple of years there at the space to like take my Sundays off and spend them with my family. And I knew you were there. And so things were handled, like I was
Yeah.
like, all right, Nick's responsible. He's not going to burn.
Yeah.
And so,
I only called when I really needed you.
so I got a call. I don't know if it was from you or somebody else on this one Sunday night, and was like, Steve, the guitar player, I think it was the guitar player from Snarky Puppy or something.
Yeah.
Got there and he didn't, and his guitar was broken or something. And they were like, we need a guitar now. And so I got the call and I like threw my, my guitar in the car and came right over and I, put it up there, and the drummer, Jason Kruk, was like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. I was like, you know what, I'm going to hang out and watch your band. So I had a couple beers. You still there?
You're still here. We got you.
Okay. Yeah, I got like 20% battery or something. I'll plug it in a minute. But, we got to talking on the patio, and I said, Jason, I'm never really here on Sundays anymore. I really try to spend time with my families because I have a Sunday morning church gig. He's like, you got a church gig? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, where, I said, yeah, I'm the music guy at worship leader at this little church in Westport. And he's like, what church? And I said, St. Paul's. He goes, Pastor Teskey? And I was like, yeah, I've been there for like, I've been the guy there for 15 years. And he goes, he said something like, I got healed in that church. And I was like, what? And so we talked, and then 2 weeks later, he was the drummer, and he was the drummer with me until 6 weeks ago. And I no longer have that, after 20 years, I'm no longer there. And that came to a close, that chapter. I mean, 20 years of my life, and my wife worked there too. So,
yeah.
But I played with Jason 6 weeks ago. That was the last time I played with him, and I met him at our jazz night, and what a wonderful guy. So, and he's been a huge influence on my life, both as a friend and spiritual mentor kind of dude. So,
yeah, tell him I
cool.
said hi. I haven't seen him since that night. That night he played, man. I haven't. So tell him I said hi and give him my best.
I sure will. Yeah, he's a good dude. He really is. I haven't seen him. We were playing together at church because our church was still doing in-person services. We were doing it outdoors for a while and all that. And I think that he's still there now, but I'm no longer there at this point. Yeah, the jazz scene, man. When I would be there on Sunday nights, it was music that moved me. Once in a while, some of the avant-garde stuff, it moved me out to the patio.
yeah. But
I liked it. I liked it at a quieter volume on the patio.
Of course, and that's the thing. Like those guys, they know what they're playing, but I think you were the only bar owner that gave them the opportunity. So that's what was so important, because there is New Haven has such a history of avant-garde jazz. To give Bob Gorey and Jeff Cedrone and the NHIC guys, to give them a platform, that was big.
I love them.
That was big. And the good thing is they all go to their own shows, so it worked out.
Yeah, I really do miss seeing those guys there. Man, I used to, like Jeff, Jeff and Bob, they just used to come and hang out at the bar,
Sure.
sort of regardless of what's going on. And
right.
I had some really amazing conversations with not only those guys, but those guys and so many others, that are part of their sort of friend group. I miss that. That's the sort of stuff that I miss about the place. I certainly don't miss fixing toilets and trying and dealing with awful landlords and promoters and things like that. But it was such a privilege to be able to do it for as long as I did it, and to be able to work with dudes like you is amazing too, So
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, man. I mean, the legacy is definitely there. Like, I miss that club, man. I miss that room. I miss the ability to play a small room where I could, play basically anything I want, and I had I did a live record there, and I did a CD release at that space. And I'm sure I'm not the only band leader that did that, you know. And that was the beautiful thing about that club, was like it had such a personality to it. It honestly felt alive. It felt like, you know, it's weird, man. Like I lament the outer space like I lament a family member that's passed on, or a good friend that's passed away. You know, that's what it felt like, because man, I spent, as so many of us did, spent so much time there. You know, and on nights where I wasn't working, or you know, I'd find myself there, and just and I knew that I could just pull up a chair to a group of people who would talk to me. I mean, it was so rare to find someone who was like rude to you there, to be honest with you. You know,
Yeah, yep. And when it was usually some like swamp Yankee at like a hardcore show. You know.
for sure. But like, you know, so many people that I'm cordial with, or, you know, I would see at a different bar in town, at Cafe Nine or Three Sheets or something, and our acquaintanceship doesn't go past, you know, hey, how you doing? A lot of them started at the outer space, just seeing each other there all the time. So it's remarkable, and it truly has a legacy, you know. And for the listeners of the podcast, like, some of the shows we had at the outer space, we had Peter Bernstein, Eddie Henderson, Jeremy Pelt, Wayne Escoffery, Kevin Hayes. We had, I remember that Peter Bernstein show was fucking sold out. Like, it,
Remember.
yeah, it was insane that time. And I remember, and what a gamble too, because back then I used to like invest my own money. Do you remember? Like, I used to say, like, look, Steve, I'm going to bring in this like famous guy. I'm paying him a lot of money. I promise you this show will sell out. Just please don't like double book me, or, you know, or something. And,
Absolutely.
and you were always like, you always had faith in me. And it was such a boost to my own ego, because there would be like a shitload of people, and you'd be like, you give me like a good thumbs up, you know, like I'm proud of you, kid. And
Well,
that gave
I
me,
was.
yeah, that gave me the confidence to keep doing this stuff, because from the outer space, that's how I got involved with Jazz Haven. And then from Jazz Haven is when I went to the, you know, formed the underground. I created my own organization based on the experiences that led to that moment. So you know, it's awesome. It's just incredible to, and I can reminisce about it all the fucking time, basically.
Oh man, that's great. Jazz Haven, that was Craig O'Donnell's thing, right? Yeah, he yeah, he was a teacher at the elementary school I went to.
Yeah, I remember. I was he tapped me, and I was a board member for 3 years. I put on three. I was in charge of 3 festivals with them, and then left for the underground. And the underground would be 2 years old in February. 6 months after forming in 2019, I put on a festival. I put on a 5-day festival within
Wow,
within 6 months of forming.
that's
And
amazing.
we were just about to have our second, you know, we were planning our second festival when lockdown came. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
been interesting, you know.
yep. No, I know it, man. I'm right with you. You know, my trajectory was, I mean, it was, things were going really, really great, you know, music wise. But you know, here we are, you know, adapting and making the best out of what we can, you know, during this time.
Yeah.
And you know, like I said, you know, who would have known I would be building a fairy house village and spending a month in the historic greenhouse at Beardsley Zoo, you know, like,
Cool, dude. That's
which
so
was
cool.
breeze and super awesome, and over the last month, you know, to be in there,
Yeah,
so great.
man. That's so cool. You know, Steve, we're running, we're coming up on the end, and
That's all.
I just wanted to ask you, what are you hopeful for, you know, in the years to come? What do you, you know, you're gonna tour again? You know, you got your artwork. What are you hopeful for?
You know, I'm definitely hopeful that there will be an end to what we're seeing right now, to the times we're living in, um, and and I really do look forward to going back out on the road and playing music. I mean, that's where I felt most at home my whole life is playing music. And you know, the model looks much different than it looked when I was a kid. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to creating a large body of art, and you know, in the miniatures world, as well as, you know, because I think if all I did is music, you know, I've done that before, and it gets to be overwhelming. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to really supporting my kids in their endeavors. And I think one thing that has been sort of bubbling up over the last 9 months of COVID is just, I'm really looking forward to having the opportunity to bring a community of people together again in a really big way. And you know, I'm not exactly sure how that's going to look, but I want it to be like really healthy and encompass the good values that were, you know, part of the spaces, you know, and have you know, just be able to lift people up again. That's, you know, so, you know, once we all get out of COVID jail, then you know, I have a couple of ideas up my sleeve of you know, for bringing people together in a really cool way.
I have no doubt that you will, and that you will continue to do so. Like you, Steve Rodgers, you are a inspiration. You are a American treasure, man. You really are. And one day you're gonna see it. Like, you've touched so many people's lives, and I have no doubt that your goodwill will continue, you know, well past this stuff. And you know what? You know, one day you and I are gonna collaborate, and we're gonna do a show together at some point, you know. So I've had ideas on what to do with our two sounds, because, you know, we're two musicians who have never performed together but have known each other for like 20 years at this point.
Well, I think that it's time to end that streak.
Sure.
Start a new streak. Yeah, I have a ton. You know, my new songs are, you know, I do this sort of like folky singer songwritery thing that, you know, it's like natural. And then I do this other thing that sort of like, you know, is all over the place, and I've been like mixing electronic music and
Nice.
crazy tone guitars and clarinet stuff, and like, you know, yeah, I could use some trumpet. So, you know, let's talk about that over thing.
I'm around. All right, Steve. On that note, it has been an absolute pleasure, man. I wish you the best. Tell your wife and kids that I said Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, all the love in the world, you know, and everything. And thank you for taking the time to sit and talk with me. I really appreciate it. Thanks for being on the show, man.
Much love, my friend. I'll see you later.
All right.
Cheers.
Yeah, so you know, here we are wrapping up another great episode, another great conversation. Thank you so much to Steve for joining me. You know, that really meant a lot, and I hope it shed some light on, you know, where I've come from in this whole thing. Like, you know, it's always best when people are focused on creating a scene for their community, and, you know, that's always been a goal of the New Haven Jazz Underground. And as, you know, 2021 is amongst us, I'm hoping that, you know, we can just keep this shit going, you know, the positivity and working hard to get everything out to everybody. So, you know, thanks again, Steve, and thanks for all your inspiration. And as I said before, I'm really trying to get more content out before the end of the year, you know, for people to enjoy over Christmas and the holiday season and stuff. Thank you to everyone who's been tuning in and letting me know. It really means a lot that, you know, you're listening, and I hope the show lives up to it. So, yeah, I think that'll do it for this episode. And, you know, I think I got a couple more before I take a little hiatus for after the holidays. So, till next time, this has been Mr. Millennial's Revenge. I'm your host, Nick DiMaria. This is a production of the New Haven Jazz Underground, and I'll see you at the next episode. Thanks so much. Take care.